After Indonesian independence was recognized, many cheered and celebrated, but Sukarno was still a bit bitter as New Guinea remained under Dutch control. Sukarno kept insisting that New Guinea is an integral part of the Indonesian Republic and would remove the Dutch colonial government by any means necessary. During the heating years from 1949 to 1962, many Dutch companies in Indonesia were nationalized or kicked out, and the Indonesian armed forces started to build up and modernized. Meanwhile, the Dutch made it clear that they don't intend to keep the New Guinea colony for long, as they were pressured by the global decolonization process. But as Sukarno and the Indonesian Republic started to send infiltrators to New Guinea in hopes of spreading pro-Indonesian sentiment, the Dutch started to build up their own military in New Guinea. In mid-1958, the Indonesian Navy and Air Force started to use their Soviet-built MiG planes and started amphibious operations to neutralize the Premesta and PRRI rebels in Sumatra and Sulawesi. This news came as a shock to the Netherlands, as the Indonesians now have the experience and knowledge to conduct amphibious operations. In 1960, the light carrier HRMS Karel Doorman alongside the destroyers HRMS Utrecht and HRMS Kortenaar was sent to New Guinea as a show of force to the Indonesians. But there were complications with sending this force. The Soviets protested against this action, claiming that the Dutch were threatening the peace of the region, while Australia, having control of the other half of New Guinea, requested an explanation of the fleet. In order to avoid any contact with Egypt, which is a close Indonesian ally, the force traveled around Africa instead of going through the Suez Canal. When the fleet arrived at Fremantle, Australia, the local seamen refused to tug the large carrier into port, showing sympathy for the Indonesians. The Karel Doorman eventually was docked after clever use of a plane's jet engines. When the fleet arrived at Hollandia, Indonesia cut all diplomatic ties with the Netherlands. Despite its severed relations with Indonesia and Japan, the fleet had done its job. The UN and the world knew that the Dutch took the dispute seriously, and Indonesia started to rethink their plans for New Guinea. In March 1961, the Dutch sent another destroyer, the HRMS Evertsen, to Hollandia to bolster its fleet. Indonesia responded to this Dutch force by intensifying their infiltration, an initial stage of a larger-scale operation known as Operation Trikora. The infiltration carried out before was proven to be ineffective, and so a larger infiltrator unit was needed to make a much bigger impact. A force of around 150 Marines and 4 torpedo boats was assembled in Tandjung Priok to begin their first stage of the infiltration. The torpedo boats were built by the Germans in the 50s-60s and were essentially Jaguar-class fast attack boats. These boats were quick and agile, however the Indonesians ordered 4 of the Jaguar-class fast attack boats fitted with wooden hulls, while the other 4 was fitted with the more traditional steel hulls. The 4 torpedo boats sent by the Indonesian Navy were the RI Macan Tutul, Harimau, RI Singa, and the RI Macan Kumbang, led by Colonel Sudomo of the Indonesian Navy. And in order to fit more personnel and reduce weight in the torpedo boats, the torpedoes were removed, which is also due to the United Kingdom refusing to supply torpedoes for the Indonesian Navy. Colonel Sudomo will be the mission director of the operation on board the RI Harimau, while the Commodore Yosudarso would oversee the operation itself aboard RI Macan Tutul. The target was Kaimana, a town located at the southern tip of what is now the province of West Papua. The plan was to head out to sea and not to stop at any ports during that journey. Next, they would receive food, equipment, and rubber boats mid-sea at a meeting point before beginning to land infiltrators to the West Papuan town of Kaimana. On the 9th of January 1962, the Indonesian force left Tandjung Priok Jakarta and set sail to the waters near the Aru Islands. The Indonesians intended to keep their mission a secret. However, on the island of VLAKKE, a large listening post manned by the Marine, the Dutch Naval Intelligence Branch, picked up the task force and warned Rear Admiral Gage Plattering about the increasing possibility of a large-scale Indonesian invasion. The Dutch had already suspected beforehand that the Indonesians would do something more serious in the coming weeks, and after receiving news about this task force, the Dutch correctly predicted that the town of Kaimana was the target, and so the town of Kaimana was reinforced with 100 Dutch Marines in an operation called Operation Patria. Rear Admiral Gage Plattering gave an order on the 10th of January to increase recon aircraft patrols in the Aru Sea and revoke the previous protocol for the recon aircrafts to wait till the enemy shoot first. Plattering ordered them to attack at sight. On the 11th of January, Plattering ordered the destroyer HRMS Evertsen to secure the area around VLAKKE HOEK, modern-day Edna Bay. The Marine predicted that the invasion would come on the 13th or the 14th. However, back at sea, the RI Singa was forced to head back due to engine problems. The Indonesian Task Force received their mid-sea supply successfully. On the 15th of January, the reduced task force approached Dutch waters on the Aru Islands at 1700 hours local time. In 2039, a Dutch Lockheed P-2 Neptune reconnaissance aircraft spotted 3 boats going full speed towards VLAKKE HOEK. As per Plattering's orders, the recon aircraft dived and ready to set off flares and fire their machine guns. However, the flares failed to ignite and the machine guns jammed. This alerted the Indonesian torpedo boats and they soon opened fire on the lone P-2 Neptune. The Neptune recovered and informed Plattering's office while being hailed by 40mm gunfire below. The Dutch destroyer HRMS Evertsen came into the scene while undergoing routine patrols around the area, while the corvette HRMS Kortena was steaming towards VLAKKE HOEK. The appearance of Evertsen forced the Indonesian task force to disperse and avoid incoming shells and machine gun fire. The operation was effectively aborted by now. The RI Harimau and RI Macan Kumbang quickly turned 180 degrees away from the larger Dutch vessel, while the RI Macan Tutul covered their retreat under orders of Commodore Yosudarso. The first salvo was fired by the Evertsen at 2100 hours, and a couple minutes later, a salvo directly hit the hopeless but determined torpedo boat. The torpedo boat was set ablaze, but it had managed to stay afloat. By this time, the Kortena arrived at the scene, and at the same time, the Evertsen started to chase the fleeing torpedo boats. Doing so, the Evertsen passed the immobilized RI Macan Tutul. The captain of the ship ordered to sink her for good, as he was aware of the great threat MTBs pose. While the Evertsen fired a few more salvos and a few more hits on the fleeing torpedo boats, the Kortena approached the burning wreck. The torpedo boats, being much faster, successfully escaped, albeit damaged. The Evertsen reversed back towards the RI Macan Tutul and alongside Kortena began rescue operations. By the 16th, the Kortena and Evertsen returned to port. The battle ended in a Dutch victory, with the Indonesian side suffering the loss of 1 torpedo boat and the death of Commodore Yosudarso, with 55 Indonesian infiltrators captured as a result. The battle was a considerable embarrassment for the Indonesian side, that when General Nasution heard the news of the defeat, he did not dare to inform President Sukarno. Instead, he ordered Colonel Murshid to inform Sukarno himself. After West New Guinea was transferred to Indonesian authorities, General Hidayat found it remarkable how the Dutch was able to know the precise location of the task force. While it was a military victory for the Dutch, this battle proved to have a significant psychological impact for the Dutch side. The Dutch administration realized that if diplomatic negotiations went fruitless, war was very likely, and this battle forced the Dutch to find favorable terms and keep negotiating in the UN. The Indonesian forces would find greater success at landing their troops on Western New Guinea by air, as the Dutch Air Force station in New Guinea was inadequate and too far to respond. By the summer of 1962, the Indonesians was ready to launch Operation Jajah Wijaya, roughly translated as victory over colonialism. The Marine was able to anticipate a large-scale Indonesian air and sea attack by August 1962. With a predicted force of 60 vessels and 50 aircrafts, the Indonesians had the upper hand compared with the Dutch small force of 14 vessels and 24 aircrafts. On August 15, 1962, the New York Agreement was signed and a ceasefire between both sides was declared. 2 days later, the Marine was able to intercept a message ordering the cancellation of Operation Jajah Wijaya. The Dutch avoided a war that they could not win by sacrificing their decaying colonial empire.